New York City. For more than 100 years, that name basically meant the future, the global center of finance, media, and most importantly, culture. It's one of the places the world has always looked to for the answer to a single question: what's next? But what happens when that city, the very symbol of forward momentum, just stops answering? What happens when the city that used to invent the future decides it's more comfortable living in the past? 90s New York has been mythologized into a kind of gritty paradise. And honestly, in some ways, the myth holds up. After the crime-ridden chaos of the 70s and the slick Wall Street excess of the 80s, the 90s felt like a moment of raw, authentic cultural rebirth. The city was still dangerous, sure, but with that danger came an undeniable energy. And more importantly, it came with affordability. This was the last time the starving artist in New York wasn't just a romantic idea, but a real demographic. You could work a part-time job, share a huge rundown loft in Soho with 4 roommates, and still have the time, energy, and mental space to actually create. That economic reality was the fertile soil from which a forest of cultural innovation grew. And this was the decade where New York hip-hop didn't just find its voice, it became the voice of global youth culture. It was the era of Nas's Illmatic, Wu-Tang Clan's Enter the Wu-Tang, and Biggie's Ready to Die. These weren't just albums, they were stories painting a picture of city life so vivid you felt like you were there, even if you were thousands of miles away. The sound was raw, the lyrics were intricate, and the production was revolutionary. It was the undisputed sound of the streets, and the entire world was listening. At the same time, the city's indie film scene was exploding. Directors like Spike Lee and Larry Clark were pointing their cameras away from Hollywood glamour and onto the city's grimiest corners. Movies like Kids or Clerks didn't just capture a moment, they defined it, exporting a very specific, raw, and effortlessly cool New York attitude to every suburban movie theater. In the art world, the slick commercialism of the 80s gave way to something more street level. The graffiti artists of the 70s and 80s were becoming gallery stars, and a new generation was mixing high and low culture in ways that felt fresh and disruptive. The 90s was the decade New York perfected its most valuable export, the myth of itself. A myth of effortless cool of creative struggle leading to artistic triumph of a city that was both dangerous and beautiful. So powerful that the city is still cashing the checks that myth wrote 3 decades ago. The problem is, it seems to have forgotten how to write any new one. If you want to see the most obvious symptom of this cultural stagnation, just look at what people are still wearing. Fashion is supposed to be about change, but in New York, the cycle seems to be stuck on repeat. What you'll see is people in the same uniforms of the 90s, a pair of Timberland boots or Doc Martens, some baggy or straight leg denim. Shoot, even after the rise of skinny jeans, they brought back baggy jeans. Brands that were born from 90s subculture like Supreme haven't just been revived, they become multi-billion-dollar giants with an identity still tied to that 90s downtown cool. In the 90s, these were regular fits. Now it's a carefully curated costume. Today's youth aren't just referencing the 90s, they're cosplaying a romanticized version of it. It's an aesthetic choice for them. And that shadow of the 90s, it looms largest over the city's music. For decades, New York was the undisputed epicenter of hip-hop, and the 90s was its imperial phase. The era of Biggie, Nas, Wu-Tang, and Jay-Z created a blueprint for lyricism and attitude that was so powerful, it seems to have permanently changed the city's musical DNA. To be clear, New York isn't musically dead. The biggest new sound is Brooklyn and Bronx drill. It has its own rhythm and slang that has definitely captured the city's youth. But even this new wave can't seem to escape the past. For one, New York drill is just an import. First from Chicago, then heavily influenced by the UK scene. It's a fascinating hybrid, but it's not a homegrown sound in the way that boom bap was. On top of that, many of its biggest stars like K-Flock have gained viral fame by just sampling older songs. This creates a strange loop, a futuristic beat pattern laid over a melody that takes you right back to the 90s or early 2000s. But the real issue is influence. For decades, what happened in New York hip-hop dictated what happened everywhere else. In the 21st century though, the biggest innovations in hip-hop have come from other cities. And it's like the two powerhouses of the 90s, the West Coast and the East Coast, are still stuck in the same lane. Atlanta gave us trap. Chicago birthed drill. These cities developed sounds that were uniquely their own. Meanwhile, New York and Cali, they still stuck in the same place musically. Now there's gonna be somebody in the comments saying this isn't stuck, it's timeless. That New York isn't stuck, it just perfected its cultural form in the 90s and it's sticking with a winner. You could say the enduring popularity of 90s style is just proof that it's iconic, not that the city is creatively bankrupt. And that's a fair point, but the problem is when that celebration becomes permanent, when honoring the past gets in the way of creating the future. Timelessness is passive. Real cultural leadership is an active process of creation and reinvention. Paris isn't culturally defined by the 1920s. London isn't trapped in the 60s. So why should New York, the self-proclaimed capital of the 21st century, be tethered to the 1990s? Let's look at the deeper forces at play. The first and biggest reason is economic gentrification. This is the root cause of it all. The simple, brutal fact is that people who made 90s New York cool could not afford to live in 2020's New York. The city has become a pleasure dome for the rich. Studies have shown a sustained decline in the city's artist population for the first time in decades, though remote work has led to some recent stabilization. Still, the trend is one of displacement. The city basically closes its doors to the young, the experimental, the broke, and the weird, the very people who are the lifeblood of any new cultural movement. Creativity thrives on risk, and you can't take risks when you're spending most of your income on rent. Second, New York has a victory lap complex. The city got so good at marketing its 90s identity that it became a victim of its own success. New York became a brand to be polished and sold to tourists and corporations. This has been called the gentrification of the mind, where the real messy experiences of city life are replaced by a sanitized, marketable version. Finally, you can't ignore the role of algorithmic nostalgia. Platforms like TikTok and Instagram have flattened history. For a teenager today, the 90s isn't a historical period, it's an aesthetic, a playlist, a mood board served by an algorithm. These platforms are designed to show you what's already popular, and nostalgia is a guaranteed click. So the algorithm feeds teens with an endless loop of 90s fashion, music, and movie clips, making it harder for anything truly new to break through the noise. The uniform on the streets, the soundtrack to the city. I mean, you still got dudes hopping on boom bap type beats. You don't see anybody from Chicago still trying to rap like Twist or Bump J. The images on our screens all point to the same thing. New York City is caught in a powerful feedback loop, endlessly celebrating the culture of its 90s glory days.